university system, I had already switched over to Bengali, but I consider myself only a student. I was a student of Sanskrit. Even now, I am merely a student, not only of Sanskrit, but Bengali literature as well. Now, I propose to take some of your valuable time on joining in a sort of a conversation. I will try to speak in that way only on reading classics. Of course, why such a subject should I consider for today's deliberation? Because I thought that there are some misconceptions about reading classics as well. It does not mean that only those who are students of Sanskrit, only they have something to do with classics. In fact, I rather propose that all of us, even though we belong to the disciplines, some disciplines in social sciences, I am not speaking of literature alone, and also philosophy. Perhaps reading and studying classics would help us a great deal. Now, let us begin with a few suggested definitions. Don't worry, I am not going to vex you with the intricacies of definition. No, somewhere you have to begin, no? So I am also beginning in my way. What is a classics, or what are the classics? The classics are those books of which we usually hear the people say, I am rereading something. For example, somebody will propose to you, I am rereading Kalidasa's Avijnana Shakuntalam. Perhaps never a, a reader of, say, in the 21st century will propose that I am reading. There is a difference between reading and rereading. When you say that I am reading such and such text, means that you are conversant in that. But rereading has two connotations. Perhaps you have read it, studied it, maybe 20 years back or maybe 10 years back. And when you are rereading, means you are proposing to us that you are going to discover something new. Unless you discover something new, there is no question of taking the trouble to reread a text. I talked about Avijnana Shakuntalam. Well, in this place, I can also talk about Banabhatta's Kadambari. Now, in that case, our approach will definitely not be identical. So let us take a relook at these two words. One is reading, another is rereading. Rereading means I am already well read, but I am proposing for some reason or other that I am proposing something new to get a new meaning out of this. So, to reassure our endeavor, we need only to observe that however vast anybody's basic reading may be, there still remains an enormous number of fundamental works that he has not read. So I am proposing something other than what I have told you earlier. That number one, I am a scholar, and that's why I am proposing rereading. But now I am telling you, I may not be scholar at all. I may be only inquisitive. I want to learn really now as a new. It is my new endeavor. So anyone who read the whole works of Kalidasa, or I was talking to you about Banabhatta, maybe this is Harshacharita, maybe this is Kadambari, or some of us who are very fond of dramatic literature may talk about Bhasha's famous 13 dramas. These names are only for examples only. You see, I am a student of Bengali. Perhaps you have already been informed about it. About Rabindranath Tagore or Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. Only these two examples will be sufficient, I think. But while I am first, otherwise we'll always miss the bus. In other words, to read a great book for the first time in one's mature years, when you are matured as a student, you are mature enough to understand the true import of a text. And it is your extraordinary pleasure. Sure, yet there might be some I am only proposing that when you talk about a classical text, whatever this might be, I could have talked about Homer's Iliad or Odyssey. I could have talked about Virgil's Aeneid. You know about, all of you are aware of these names, or Dante's Divina Commedia. But the main purpose of our all these statements would not change anything about the classicality. Then what is that classicality? So here you have to address the truth content of a text. A text to be to attain the attention of the readers throughout the ages must propose something which is replete with human truth. I know I am addressing you. You are participating in a session organized mainly by the Department of Sanskrit. So while, as I remember this fact, I was talking about a decision, a definition. So the definition comes to leads us to the truth content of a text. Classicality depends on addressing the truth content of the life portrayed in a text, particularly in the classical text. Reading in now, some of you are because I'm as I'm looking at you, some of you are very young. So what I'm going to tell you you may be very much annoyed with me. There is a proposition that while you are in your youth, you may not be able an Italian author. Of course, I have read in English. He has a book called The Literature Machine. Now, this literature, what does that mean? The literature machine, he proposes something that in your youth, you are not true, actually expected to understand the true meaning of the truth content, and hence your endeavor may be unfruitful. Because in youth, the readers are more or less impatient. They are distracted too easily because of their inexperience. Perhaps you are, because many of you are still in your youth, so you may try to contradict me, because even if that great Italian author about whom I have talked to you, Mr. Italo Calvino, he is a novelist as well as he is a theoretician. This is his words. It is not mine. I am only referring to his words to you. You may or may not agree with him. So he says that to a true meaning of a classical text is which gives you opportunity to rediscover, not to discover, but to rediscover the innate meaning of the text, their inner mechanisms, and this is what a classical text means. It comes as a challenge to you. Now, perhaps all this while I have ventured into the domain of some theoreticality. Let us forget it, because practice without theory or theory without practice are of no use. Now, let us examine Avijnana Shakuntalam for the time being. You know, the great article by Rabindranath Tagore, what he wrote about Shakuntala, the relationship of King Dushyanta and Shakuntala, and through that relationship, unfolding of the impact of love, not only romantic love. Romantic love is, of course, a great thing which is very much fascinating. Not only Kalidasa, I can talk about many poets from different languages of this world, but that does not help us much. When you reach the seventh act of Avijnana Shakuntalam, when after a long separation, Dushyanta and Shakuntala are reunited. Reunited through whom? Through Sharbadamana, their son. Now, there is a philosophy beneath that. A classical text never proposes that you may portray love, you may portray many other things, but you should not forget your social responsibility and your cultural integrity. If cultural integrity is lost, if your sense of social responsibility is lost, then no text can be termed as a classical one. This is only a simple instance that I have talked about. This is, I can venture into other domains as well, because all are not to be deciphered in the same manner. Let me jump at Shapnabhashabadatta. Those who are not students of Sanskrit, for you, that is a very famous drama written by Bhasha. He is in the early Christian eras. Bhasha was a person who hailed from, I'm not going into any details, hailed from vicinity of Trivandrum, that is present-day Kerala. His dramas, plays were discovered from there only. Now, there are 2 points worth remembering. Shapna Bhashabadatta. Bhashabadatta is a great uh, dramatic character who has sacrificed much for her husband. And that sacrifice you may not appreciate much in these days. You know, because when we are talking of Sanskrit literature, in that case, Shapna Bhashabadatta, there is another lady also who was the queen, another queen. And through that queen, Bhashabadatta has helped her husband to regain his kingdom. As I am aware, there many of you do not belong to the discipline of literature. That's why I am trying to make my point only by hinting at the main points. But my point is not there. Maybe when you are reading in 2025, that is, this year is also going to end within 2 months, then do you really appreciate such kind of scenario? Because polygamy is not appreciated these days. But you are reading a text when nobody raised an eyebrow regarding the practice of polygamy. As you understand, one husband may have 2 or more wives. You think about Kalidasa. In his own drama, he has shown to us one king may have 3 wives. Is it not the somewhat ethical question which disturbs us? So you should not look at those things. Only remember that our literature, it may be classical literature, it may be a present-day literature, it does never go beyond the present-day scenario, social taboos, that is do's and don'ts. During the age of Bhasha or Kalidasa, or for that matter, I can talk about many others, that was not a very real problem. But we are trying to address it to a society which is leaving behind within 2 months the first quartet of the 21st century. Because on 31st December 2025, we will complete the first quartet of the century. Is that it? It's pure arithmetic. All of you are aware. There's nothing to talk about that. But I will now jump at some other thing. When all of you are using as I am using now, my mobile set. And these days, for some 6 months or so, I found that something called AI is disturbing me. It disturbs me. Maybe you are younger, you feel very elated about that. But I am disturbed because it is trying to challenge you in the context of comprehending truth. Because AI can create anything which you may not say. Forget about these days. I think all of you are teachers, and you have instructed your students to produce some text on something, any proposition, and what they will do, they will immediately consult their mobile set and ask the chat GPT to produce a text, and you are not a fool. Being a teacher, you know that such English is not possible from them. Or maybe Hindi also. I am not aware of Hindi. But I can talk about what is happening in Bengali. So what the point I am arriving at is now, please try to understand it from a different standpoint altogether. I was talking about truth content and its integral relationship with the classical text. Now, this truth content has no meaning these days because truth is produced by AI with the twinkle of a second. Now, as a student of literature, as a student of social science, as a student of philosophy, or even other disciplines about I may not refer to them. But my point is, if in literature, I am a student of literature, that's why I'm again and again referring back to literature, and I am concerned about the truth content. Truth, untruth. Now, excuse me, because of my bad habit, I will vex you further by drawing your attention to the concept of post-truth, which is being propagated in the days of postmodernism. Those who belong to social sciences, and if some of you are from the discipline of English literature, you will understand immediately what I am proposing now. And see, maybe 25 years back, when I was a teacher, of course, at that time I was not a student, but such kind of problems did never occur because the reality was something different. When truth was truth and falsity was falsity. But now a third proposition has come. In between, it is neither true nor false. In the days of postmodern days, you are confronting something called post-truth. In my own language, that is Bengali, because I like to think about that. I have two or three articles on that, but be not afraid. I am not going to vex you further. Purposefully, I have brought this issue to you. When you were a student, you were not a teacher. Now you are all teachers. Then your life was more simple, much more simple, much more straightforward. At that time, when you were reading a classics, when you were reading any text of any discipline, you are aware that either this will be true or it will be false. But now in 2025 is ending, and now you are not quite sure that you are neither here nor there. Because the concept of post-truth, which has already arrived in the social sciences, and take it from me, Govind perhaps knows about me, that I talk about the concept of post-truth in literary theory, because I work in literary theory basically for last 20 years or so. So the theoretical understanding has not helped me. I'm talking about me, I'm not talking about you all. Because a new situation has come up. In that situation, when I try to relax and enjoy a classical text, a concept of post-truth comes. Now, how do you use it? I'm not going to further trouble you with more examples. Go back to Abhigyana Shakuntalam. I'm sure this is a very famous drama, either in English translation or Bengali translation or the language, or some a lady was from Assamese society. So in Assamese, definitely you have read the, at least you know what happened in Abhigyana Shakuntalam. Now there is another question. If there is somebody from English discipline, you will immediately remember from Cambridge University Press, there was a very famous book. The name is What Happens in Hamlet? Question mark. What happens in Hamlet? Hamlet is Shakespeare's wonderful drama. It is a classical text because it was published in 1606. So more than 400 years have passed by. But now when you try to confront Hamlet or Hamlet's dilemma, to be or not to be, that is the question. This question is not only Hamlet's, is the question maybe of some of us here. Now, when Dushyanta confronts a particular situation in his own court, the two sages come from Kanno, you know that, with a lady whom he has forgotten by Durvasha's curse, or forget about Durvasha's curse. According to Rabindranath Tagore, there was no curse, but there was a very interesting comment from afar. Shakrit Krita Pranayavayang Jana. That is, Dushyanta is a symbol of patriarchal attitude. And if you, some of you may or may not agree, but polygamy is, on those days, was very natural in a society in which male beings dominate. So Shakrit Krita Pranayayang Jana, there is a hint. Kalidasa was a great, great, great creator. He did not only address his own audience, but we, belonging to the 2025, he has given a hint for us. Don't think that what Dushyanta has done is because of Durvasha's curse only. Now, I bring about the truth content, the question of, the problem of, not question, the problem of truth content, truth about relationship between two lovers. Now, if the loved one is discarded all on a sudden, then some questions come. It is the to be or not to be, something like Hamletian dilemma also. Dushyanta had his own dilemma too. And Durvasha's curse is definitely not only responsible for that, rather Dushyanta himself is responsible. Now, I was talking of post-truth. Now, this truth is understood much better when you come out from your own time. Because when Dushyanta refuses Shakuntala, that was a time, and much later, in the hermitage of Kashyapa, he is reunited, and through this reunion, the truth content has completely changed. What for? What is the, you see, what happened in Hamlet? I told you about that very famous book. But I ask a question, I request you to ask a question. Whenever you read a classical text, what happens in, for example, Abhignana Shakuntalam? What happens in Shapnabashabhadattam? What happens in Kadambari, like that? This happening, this event is a human event, and that human event depends only on the truth content, and the truth is never static, it is dynamic. In the court of Dushyanta, truth was something, or much before that, in the hermitage of Kanna, when Dushyanta first meets Shakuntala, that is a separate time altogether. So there is a sequence of time that you have to understand. And sequence of time is nothing but a sequence of truth content. Perhaps this is what I am proposing to you. You have to understand your classics, whatever text it may be, in whatever language, that there is a scheme of time. And scheme of time means scheme of space as well. Space, this spatiality, because we we dwell in a particular societal position. And I will now propose that truth is something which is determined on your position in a particular point of time. And see, I'm talking about myself. I have taken a position about anything, I am not talking about the any text, but something which is happening around me. I am taking a position. But does it mean that my position will always be static? If a human being is dynamic, then his position will also be dynamic. His belief system, his faith will also be dynamic. It is never static. A classical text wins us because it expands the dynamicity, the dynamics of your position. Your position, not only as a reader, your position as a culturally living person, your position as a socially living person. And perhaps I must say now that what I am proposing, that there is a value system underneath. A classics cannot be a classics if it does not make you aware about the value system in which you are in. The classics are peerless, Advitiya in Sanskrit. It cannot be referred to, or it cannot be compared to any other text. Mahabharata cannot be compared to Homer's Iliad, though Homer's Iliad is a great text, definitely. But one thing cannot be compared to another. Everything is unique. Ananna in Sanskrit or in Bangla. In my own language, we call Ananna. That means Advitiya, which is no second. It is unitary, it is unique. And this is the meaning of uniqueness. And a classic text is always unique. Every rereading of a classical text is as much a voyage of discovery as if you are reading it for the first time. You take it from me, I know. In understanding literary text, subjectivity does not count. But even in that objective standpoint that you have taken, there is a subjectivity underneath. It has to be. Now, this subjectivity means yourself, your shatta in Sanskrit or in Bengali. This is unchangeable. What changes is your society. What changes is your time in which you are living. Every reading of a classic is definitely a rereading of your own position. What I am saying? Rereading of your own position. I have not said that it is rereading of Kalidasa. It is rereading of Bhasha. It is rereading of Bharavi, or for that matter, Bhanavatta, or anybody you may think of. Actually, you are rereading yourself. Your position you are rereading, because your position determines the truth, not the other way. That is, the author has written, but after the author has written a text, the author does not exist anymore. Who exists then? Readers exist. The authors become irrelevant. And that's why these days in Western literary theory, of course, Govind might say that we have good parallel in our Indian system as well. What does it mean? Reader's response criticism. If there is anybody from English, you will understand immediately what I'm saying. That is, the author may have written something, but the author is dead. In which way? Because no sooner had the author completed his text, the authorship is over. Now the reader is taking over. So that is a new kind of reality. It is a new kind of truth whatsoever. So a classic is a book. Now this is very interesting that it has never finished saying, explaining what it has to say or to explain. I'm again repeating what I have said you. A classic, what is a classic then? A classic is a unique book. Yes, uniqueness has to be stated. A unique book that has never finished, that has never concluded saying or narrating or deciphering something which it has to say, which it has to explain, which it has to elaborate. Unless it elaborates, it has no meaning. You see, it's such a point that it can be discussed maybe for several sessions, but yet it will never end. Because in that case, I am saying something, rather I am venturing an effort which is perhaps not very wise also. I am trying to generalize, but no general proposition is possible. For example, say in the Banaparva, whatever comes to my mind, I am trying to share it with you. The great Yudhishthira and the Bakarupi Dharma, when what they are saying, what they are discussing, Baka or that Dharma is posing some questions and Yudhishthira is answering them relentlessly. Now, is it a statement of an event? No, no, never. It is metaphysics. It is pure and simple metaphysics. It is pure and simple ontology, astitva tattva, philosophy. It is not only epistemology. It is not only jnana tattva. I think there might be somebody here from philosophy. What I am proposing, that something like the Baka Yudhishthira Samvada in the Banaparva of the Mahabharata, Whatever is being transpired is both a literary text and also a metaphysical text and also a philosophical text. It is also ontology, it is also epistemology, it is also another thing which I have not just now it come to my mind. In Bengali or Sanskrit, we called it Tatporja Pratiti Tattva. That is, what is Tatporja Pratiti? Understanding of the meaning underneath. You are referring to a text and it has many layers. All the good texts have many layers. And these many layers in the Baka Yudhishthira Sambhada is very, very apparent. When he says Mahajana Janagata Shapantha. You know that. I think all of you are aware of this famous shloka, the famous verse. Mahajana Janagata Sapantha. What is our path? Through which path we should move on? Mahajana Janagata. Those who are great persons, you follow them, you follow their path. And I will draw your attention to another famous slok, not of the Mahabharata, but from Manusangita. Etadesha prasutasya shakashadagrajanmanaha swang swang charitrang shiksharan prithibhyang sarvamanavaha. Etadesha prasutasya, the persons, the great persons who were born in this country, that is India, Etadesha prasutasya shakashadagrajanmana, those who have lived before us. Agrajanmana, agraja. In Bengali also use this. Agrajanmana. Swang swang charitrang shiksharan prithibhyang sarvamanava. In the entire world, human beings, the humanity is learning from their experience. Don't you think that what in Baka Yudhishthira Sambhada, Mahajana Janagata Sapantha, it summarizes this only. It is true philosophically, it is true epistemologically, Jnana Tattva. It is also true ontologically, Astitva Tattva, Shatta Tattva. According to all these vagaries of wisdom, it is true. Of course, that was a wonderful time that our ancestors have crossed. Then truth did not pose any problem for us. But just a few minutes back, I was talking to you about a very complicated scenario these days. When you are trying to read a classical text, you are trying to comprehend the truth content, then somebody warns you, either through your so-called AI, artificial intelligence, or some other agencies, that truth and falsity will not suffice. There might be a third proposition, post-truth. You have already crossed the barriers of being true. Now, if this is a questionnaire, Prashnamala, sorry, I was using Bengali, sorry for that. Prashnamala, questionnaire. And you are supposed to answer those questionnaire or Prashnamala. You have to come back to your own solutions. Because solutions, the classical texts may hint at some solutions, but ultimately, as a reader, as a rereader who is reading it for the maybe 7th time or the 10th time, you are trying to deduce the meaning for your own benefit. So a classic, therefore, does not necessarily teach us anything we did not know before. It is not that you did not know all that. No, Mahajano Janagatasa Pantha, everybody knows that. Yes, we should follow the wise persons. But before this was written down in the Mahabharata in such a nice way, classical way, did we really know about that? In a classic, we sometimes discover something we have always known. We thought that we knew, but actually we do not know. But without knowing that this author said it at first, Vyasadev in Mahabharata told first, and after that maybe some many others have repeated it. But you understand that you, as a human being, is associated with this Srinkhola, Jnana Srinkhola, the epistemological disciplinary process in a special way. And this special way is delineated by all the classical texts. So it gives you pleasure. Binudan. It is not that you are not delighted, but being delighted, it does not really end. You are you have many things to gain from a rediscovery of that wisdom. A relationship, a matrix, M-A-T-R-I-X, a matrix of relationship and affinity, Songjog, with the society around, with your family, maybe. Perhaps some of us, we do not know, but in our family also we are disjointed. But this unites, Songyuga. A few days back, I was writing in Bengali, of course. I'm not going to give any details, but I will now tell you the title of my article, Asangyoger Kuhok, Sangyoger Shustrusha. That means when you are disunited, you saw everywhere, you may see everywhere. I'm not going to explain it. It is only a kuhok. It is not true. It is false. So what you have to do? You are to having a shustrusha. You have to serve. You have to cure. Through what? Through connectivity. Classical literature can do that. It can dispel your asangjog. It can dispel your disunity and reunite you with your own self. With your own self, it reunites. So this in Bengali, I have proposed Sangyoger Shustrusha, and the classical literature can do that. So may we say that classic text is there for something which is maybe equivalent to the universe, Vishwa Brahmanda. It contains the Vishwa Brahmanda, the universe within itself. But it talks in a different language through a language employed by our ancient wise people. Those wise people had poets and philosophers. And being student of Sanskrit, many of you are in that discipline only, you know, Kaviri Manishi Paribhushayambhu. It is from the Upanishad. Who is a Kavi? He is a Manishi. He is a Shayambhu. He does not originate from something. He originates from himself. He has no origin other than himself. Shatta, Param Shatta, the great being. And a classic is a book which may be equated to a universe, which is replete with that Paramata, the sublimity. I am not talking about any Param Satta, but Paramata. What is Paramata? Sublimity. Sublimity means there is no beyond. Ojo nittaha shashatoyang purane na anhannate hannamane sarire. But that is separate issue, so I'm not going there. It automatically comes to my mind. That's why I have told you. So classic author is the one to whom you can never remain indifferent, nirlipto. You cannot be indifferent to such an author who has given you a classic text, who has created a classic text. And after rereading a classic text, you are able to justify yourself, means justify your existence, justify your positivity, your positional positivity. Because obviously, if you do not understand yourself, what is your real position in this world, in your society, then how can you go for any meaning whatsoever, be it classical text or something else? So, in these days, when we talk about the meaning of classical education, we meaning of reaching unto the cultures and societies and literatures and different wisdom, cycles of wisdom, not only wisdom, cycles of wisdom. So then you will able to understand that you are actually serving the purpose about which you are not aware yourself, to serve the purpose of humanity by being true to your existence. So classic literature, any classic text teaches you about not wisdom, but of perfection. But for achieving that perfection through a process which is akin to different disciplines of our earthly life. Earthly life we cannot deny. But while you are now, perhaps I may refer to, now perhaps I have come to an end. I have already talked much. Maybe you are already wondering when I will finally stop. So I'm not going to disturb you much more, but so I'm giving you an anecdote. Sorry, a small anecdote about none other than Socrates. I think you know the great philosopher Socrates. You know, Socrates was compelled to drink hemlock poison. So when they were preparing the hemlock, Socrates, do you know what Socrates was doing? Now, you will be astonished to note that Socrates was at that time learning a tune on the flute. Somebody was playing the flute nearby among his disciples, and he was very keenly listening to that. Then some of his disciples asked him, don't you know that this hemlock is being prepared to you? Look here, they are preparing. What good it will make to you? That even if you are going to die within a few moments, but you are listening to that flute. Now, this question does not perplex you. But Govind, I will refer to Mahabharata's Shanti Parva once again, and perhaps it will finally dissolve if there is any doubt in our mind regarding the meaning of life. Socrates is one thing. Hemlock is being prepared for him so that he may die drinking it, and he was listening to a flute nearby, the tune. There is a very famous anecdote in the Shanti Parva when Yudhishthira and Bhishma were talking. You know about that. Bhishma was on the bed of arrows. Yudhishthira went there. And then there is a wonderful, in my own way, I'm telling you the anecdote. A passerby was going through a forest and he was very unmindful. There was a deep well and he just slipped into that bed. But while sleeping, he saw that, the banyan tree roots are very strong. So it was being prolongated on that well. And this passerby, with his hands, he caught hold of that. And do you know what the poet Basho says? When he was trying to save his life, the passerby looked down and saw that many poisonous snakes are playing there. And the root of that banyan tree, it was being cut by the mice, idur karche, mice. And but he was not, he was trying to withstand everything because just on that banyan